Welcome back, students of class 4. This is your social science, and today we are going to do another topic, that is chapter 3, How Man Learn to Grow Food. And this lesson is in page number 20. In this lesson, we are going to learn about how the early man has begun its settlement and how they changed their life with every passing years. Here, what you see are the early men. Early men, they did not have the clothes that we are wearing now, so they were mostly using animal skins. Okay, so the outfit, the dress that you see them wearing are very different. In this lesson, you are going to learn more interesting things about the early man. I'm sure you have also learned about early man in other subjects, but here in this lesson, it is a kind of story where they have started from a life where they were eating the things that they find around their environment, and now it has changed to markets and shops. Their lives has changed. Okay, so early man, for their food, what are the things that they were depending? They were roots of plants, they were fruits, they were the flesh of animals, they were grains and vegetable bulb. Okay, so these were the food items that they were eating. Let me tell you one thing. Those days, during early man's time, they did not had a proper house. So for food, they always travel from one place to another. Even for water also, they have to go from one place to another, because we all know that the water doesn't stay at one place, right? If there is more rainfall, there will be more water, and if there is no rainfall, those water areas also becomes dry. So for these people, since they did not have a proper house, and since they don't know how to grow the crops and the vegetables, so they used to travel from one place to another, always searching for this food, for animal flesh, for water, or sometimes even for sleeping. Okay, see, nowadays what happens, we have a market, right? We don't have to go out like the early man looking for food, for water, for vegetables, because nowadays we have the market area. And when you go out to the market, you find all the fruits, vegetables, you find rice. There's so many food items that we get in the market, and for that we don't have to go anywhere. We just have to go to the market, buy them, bring it home, cook and eat. So that is how our life is right now, right? But those days, during the early man's time, the life was very hard, because they have to search for everything, and they did not had all the comforts like we have today. Okay, so how they were searching for food, especially for animal flesh. Nowadays in the market, we also get meats, right? We get pork meat, we get beef, we get chicken. But those days, they do not have any of these things. So they used to go to the jungle, they group up together, and they will wait for any animals, attack them, kill them, and then they bring it home. So when they bring it, the whole family will eat that, and once it gets over, again they will do the same thing. They will go to the jungle, kill the animal, bring it. So this was how they were surviving. This was how they were filling their stomach whenever they are hungry. Okay. See, nowadays what people do, we have agriculture. There are people who used to work in the field, and they used to supply us the rice, all the vegetables, all the fruits. So for us, it's very easy, because we just have to buy from them, right? So we have people who work in the field. But those days, there were no such thing. But there is one question here. How did agriculture first came, right? So that is the question. till now we don't have the exact answer to how agriculture started, how people started cooking the food, how people started wearing clothes. We don't have the proper and exact idea, but we can also figure out from the remains that we found. Means we still find some of the things that the early mans used from archaeologists. Okay, this you will study in the higher classes. As of now, let's just learn about their early man and their life. So early man, okay, first let's just say that they had an idea about agriculture. And how is it? Whenever you take out some plants and then you leave that space, you see that after a few weeks or months, again another plant comes out in that same land, right? So that must have been the first idea that struck their mind. So they decided to plant. So suppose they have eaten a fruit or they have eaten a vegetable, then the seed they have put it inside a mud, and because of the rain and the sun, later on it started growing. And they saw that whenever there is no rainfall, the plants dry out, right? So in order to save the plants, they also decided to pour water on it. Okay, so as they did that regularly, the plants grew, and later they were able to eat the fruits that was produced from these plants. So that was the first idea that struck the mind of an early people. So after that, they doing it by themselves. So they started digging the mud, they bought the seeds, they put it there, and then they watered it regularly, and they produced their own vegetables. And also they started rearing animals. Okay, so animals like dog, chicken, cats, cows, those were reared at home, and they found that these animals also give out babies, right? So instead of killing them, they just let them breed, and then it grew more and more. So with that, they learned that we don't have to go to the jungle anymore, kill any animals and eat them, right? They have to just keep the animals at home, give them food, rear, and then with more children they can also kill them, they can eat, and they can use the flesh of this the skin of these animals as their clothing, because during the winter times it becomes very difficult for them to bear the cold. So the skins of the animals kept them warm. Okay, now with the coming of agriculture, now in order to do more and more agriculture, I told you it is about cultivation, planting the fruits and vegetables and rice, right? So in order to do more and more cultivation, they also needed tools. So tools, the first tools that they used were the stones. Okay, so stones were very hard. They used to take the stones, make it into different shapes and sizes, and then they used to dig the mud. So once they do that, they can also put the seeds, or some of the tools were also used for hunting, the stone tools. Okay, I'm talking about the stone tools. So they tied up the stone with some wood, and then it was used as tools to kill the animals. Or sometimes they also tie the stones in some wood, and they use it to dig the mud. Okay, so here in these images you can see some of the examples which the early men were using. These are their tools. Okay, some were used for cultivation, some was used for grinding. Okay, some were used for killing the animals, and so on. But later on, there was this Iron Age. Once the early man discovered iron, things really changed. Now they were using stones, right? However, stones were not as strong as iron. So once they discovered iron, they heat it, make it into different shapes, and then use it as a tool. You can see that they have started making spears out of it. Then they also made some different tools that was used for field work, some of the tools were used for killing the animals, and so on. Okay, so once they discovered this iron age, the early humans, they became more and more intelligent, and they decided to explore more and more. And with that thought, with that ideas, they began to make more new things that changed their life one after the other. Okay, so now with the coming of these iron tools, they could do more gardening, more plot of land was used for agriculture, more vegetables were also being able to plant, and they also found enough food that helped them to survive for months. Okay, so if you remember, I told you that early human beings, they didn't had proper food and proper place, right? So every time the whole family, they would travel from one place to another, searching for food, water, and a place to sleep. But now, after agriculture and after learning how to rear the domestic animals, they started staying in one place, and they also lived a better life. And they also learned that they can do much more in the days to come, right? So they did agriculture, and they stopped hunting of animals, but now they started depending on the animals which they can take care at home, and in that way they lived a better life. Okay, see, nowadays what you see in the society, we see that there are men who are involved in the field work. There are people who especially work in the field and provide us all the eatables that we get in the markets. We see that we have weavers who used to make clothes and shawls, and they supply it in the shops and markets. Also, there are people who weave the baskets. They make beautiful and very usable baskets where we can store the food or clothes or so many things. All right, and then we also have people who makes the pots. Now with the coming of pots, the early human beings, they also started cooking with the help of pots. Okay, so these things, they are not only done in the present age, but during the early man's time, they started all these things. So after the agriculture, they realized that they need more and more people for agriculture, right? Because for agriculture, a single person or two or three person cannot work. So for that, they need more people. So they started gathering, and the villages were formed. Okay, now not only one family stay in one place, but more families started gathering in one area, and they called it villages. Now in this one single villages, there were people who worked in the field. Some of them make baskets, some of them make pots, and some of them makes shawls. So what they did, they even exchanged. Okay, some are very good in making pots, so they would exchange with the ones who can make good clothes. Then there were people who make very good baskets, so they would exchange with the ones who have planted fruits and vegetables. So likewise, there was occupation formed. Okay, where people involved themselves in different works. And later on, the early human beings, they also grew interest in dancing and singing. So whenever they have some special events, then they used to dance and sing, and also to worship the nature. We all know that early times, during the early man's time, they did not believe in the gods that we believe now, right? They believe in nature, they believe in the sun, the moon, the rain. So whenever they need water for agriculture, they would pray to the nature gods to send them rain. And then whenever there is rain, they believe that it was the rain god who gave them rain, right? So there was different forms of religions um, that came up during their times. Okay, so in order to worship, in order to enjoy the moment, they started dancing. Now, when we look at the present times, there are different dance forms. Even in India alone, we have different dances. Okay, so it all started from the early man's time. Then another thing that we see is, in the previous picture you can see that there are people who make boats, right? And those were very simple boats that was made from mud. But in the later times, there were boats which were designed, and they grew interest in art. Okay, now when we look at the present art, we have more colors, we have more designs, and the people, they also sell these arts. Okay, so now we have villages. Now as the villages grew more and more, there were people like kings, there were soldiers, there were ministers, and there were also noblemen and farmers with different occupations, which I told you, right? So there were kings and leaders who was the leader of the entire village, and they used to decide on what to do about the village, because earlier there were only one family in one place, but now we have more than 10-20 families in one villages, right? So in order to control, in order to look after these people, so there was a man, a leader, who would look after the matter, and he also need help from his ministers, and there were special soldiers who look after the leader, and there were also soldiers who guard the farm, because once they started farming, once they started taking care of animals, they also needed few people to guard them, right? So more and more soldiers and guards were required. So this is how it grew. Okay, the number grew in villages. And the need for houses, so earlier the houses were made of wood, leaves, bamboos, but with time it changed to brick houses, mud houses, and even the designs also changed. Now these were the animals that were mostly domesticated, not only for their food but also to help them in different ways, like for traveling, for carrying heavy baggages, for different purposes. Okay, so we can see a horse, a camel, an elephant, and a yak. So these are some few examples of animals that were used for carrying the load and for carrying people from one place to another. Also, we can see that animals that were used in the field work, there were animals like sheep whose wool is taken out and made into clothes. Then there are animals like cows whose milk are used to make eatable things. Also, the creams and the products that you are using in your body are also made from this animal milk. Okay, and there were pigs which were reared. Now let's have some revision of whatever we have learned so far with the help of this question time. Number 1, early man did not know how to grow food. That is why they traveled from one place to another, right? Number 2, new plants grow out of seedlings. So if you put a seed, new plants grow, small saplings grow, all right? Number 3, small settlements are known as villages. Okay, earlier I told you there were only family members. There was father, mother, their children, or sometimes their grandparents. But now more and more families started settling in one place, and they also worked together, right? And they formed villages. Number 4, perhaps the first animal to be tamed was the dog. Okay, so the first animal that's lived with humans were the dog, because they found that dogs were more obedient. Dogs used to guard the home, and dogs were also very humble, very loyal to their masters. Okay, so dogs were the first animals to be tamed. Well, students, we have come to the end of the lesson. Thank you very much. I'll see you again in the next video lesson.